All right, everyone. Welcome to our next Tanya class. We start off always with a l'chaim. Thank you very much, Ron. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam v'niyad v'vari.
Amen. Do you have us all in mind?
No, you gotta make your own bracha. The bracha's in the end, you gotta do your own bracha. All right, so last week we were introduced. If you're following us in the old print, it's page 50, bottom of page 53, top of page 54. In the new print, it's on page 55. So last week we were talking about, we didn't cover much ground. We had kind of a question and answer period. So we are suspending Asaf's question rights. That's why we want to cover some ground. No, God forbid. So we were introduced to the concept of nefesh, ruach, and neshama. So Alter Rebbe begins chapter 2, Parak Beis, saying that every soul comes from God and is a part of God Himself. But just because the soul comes from God Himself, that doesn't mean it's going to be equally experienced by every single person. So the neshama descends, and sometimes a little bit is experienced. That little bit, or that lowest level, is called nefesh. Nefesh, we said, is life force. So everything in the world has nefesh. Everything. The blade of grass, the leaf, everything has nefesh. Then we said there's ruach. Ruach is, we're not going to get into the rest of experience. We're talking about how a person is in touch with his divine consciousness. Ruach is spirit, which means a person has more connection. And then we said there is chaya, there is neshama. Chaya and chida we're not going to be addressing. Wasn't there another book with a blue cover?
That was Enon's.
Sinon's. Okay. So based on this, that the neshama comes down and experiences the world, relates to the world. Put it that way, relates to the world in different ways. We could understand how it is that you have Jews of various different levels, because not every Jew relates to God and Torah the same way. Some Jews wake up in the morning and they're excited about Torah and they're excited about Judaism, and when an opportunity to comes up, presents itself, that is, let's say, opposite towards God's will, they have no problem with turning away and saying no, saying no. And some people, it's a struggle. In simpler words, we have tzaddikim, 100% righteous people, and we have people on the other extreme that every mitzvah is hard for them. If they're all coming from the same place, why is that? So that's because not every neshama's connection to the material world or to the material body is felt the same. Some people, their soul is so concealed. The connection is only nefesh. I'm going to say something, Asaf, and I don't want to get into it. I'm just going to bring it up, a topic.
Who's this Asaf?
Exactly. That's why you're sitting at the back of the class today. I should turn on the camera, right? So there is a concept of Gilgul, of reincarnation, but not necessarily does the soul come back into a person. In the book Sefer al-Gilgulim and Kabbalah talks about it. Sometimes the soul can come down into an animal or even an inanimate object.
Punishment, though, right?
Yeah. There was a guy. I don't want to get this story.
In
Yeah, a soul of a human being could be trapped inside a rock or a stalk of wheat, for example. Again, we don't know this. What I'm saying is, although the soul is very powerful, but the keli, the vessel, to utilize that power, it is unable. It's incapable. So everyone has this tremendous power. The problem is there might be, I don't say a disconnect, but what you're experiencing is very low voltage. And therefore, because you're experiencing that low voltage of Judaism, therefore the person was not necessarily that inclined. He has to work a lot harder to do a mitzvah. And now the Alter Rebbe is going to give an example. So we'll start off from the words Mekom Makim, which No, sorry. No, in the new book is 56. New book is it's 56. Sorry, top of page 56. In the old book, it's top of page 54. Mekol Makom, nevertheless, Sheiresh, the root of Kol Nefesh Ruach Neshama Kulam, the root of every single person, every single Yid, Jew, Mirosh Kol Mamadregas, from the head of all levels. It means the holiest Jew, Moshe Rabbeinu, Ad Seif Kol Dargin, to the end of all levels. Hamaluvish beguf ami oretz, that is vested in the body of the ignoramuses. Why doesn't a person learn Torah? I mean, obviously we're talking about a person who doesn't strive for Torah. The kal shebakalim, and the illiterate and light-minded Jews. Illiterate, by the way, and light-minded Jews are not the same. Ami oretz is a person who could be an intelligent guy. He was never exposed to Torah. Could be he's a very serious guy, and he's a very studious person. He never was exposed to Torah. By the way, the word Am Aretz is usually translated as an illiterate. That's the way it's translated here. But the literal translation is Am Aretz, a person of the land, a farmer. Unless you're going to tell me the score, Eric. Who?
Not us.
Vegas? Yes. Already? Okay, this class is L'chaim. That Fall should make a comeback. Hopefully, next time we check, it'll be tie game.
Yes, the man of the land.
So a man of the land. I mean, the person's a farmer. Farmers aren't stupid people. They're just, in fact, Rashi gives an example. I think. No, it's in the book of Deuteronomy. Rashi gives an example. There were people that were able to taste the earth, and they were experts. So this earth is best for olives or whatever it is. Rashi gives that example based on a Gemara or Medrash. I forgot what it is. These are not stupid people. They just never learn Torah. Then you have the Kal Shabakalim, the light-minded people that don't take things seriously. So even those people, Nimshach, are derived in Moicha Elyon from the supernal mind, Shichachmi Lokav Yachal, which is, as it were, the supernal wisdom. There's a whole long note here. You could read it. I'm going to summarize it. I hope I remember all the details. But the Alter Rebbe is giving an example of the relationship between a son and a father. When a baby is conceived, you have the drop of semen and you have the egg. If you put that under a microscope, there is no head, there's no heart, there's no arms, legs, bones, sinews, muscles, nothing. But it starts there. It starts there, and then after a whole drawn-out period of 9 months, where obviously scientifically there's the egg split and the nerve cell and all that, but all that process where we take an original concept of the semen and the egg, and we develop it into a child, including the hair and the toes and even the toenails. All that is connected to the father. So when you see a toenail of a child, what you're really looking at, the fungus toenail, what you're really looking at, right? Gotta go see a doctor. Right? What you're really looking at is the mind of the father, because nothing consumes a person like the conception of a child. That means when a man and a woman are intimate with each other, they're totally, Kabbalah explains why this is, they're totally preoccupied with that action. So, and Alter Rebbe is going to speak about it now in the next words, that the child comes from the mind of the father, because when the semen comes out, that his entire being is invested in that. So although later on you look at a child, and now again, the reason why it's using a father, not the mother, because the child develops in the stomach of the mother. So it's not so radical to say that the child's connected to the mother. It's a lot more radical to say that although the child's an independent being, the child is still connected with the mind, the deepest part of the father. And the analogy that Alter Rebbe is going to say is the same thing. You see a Yid, and you look at a Jew and you say, look at this guy. He's a low bum. He's a toenail, a pinky toenail, fungus, dirty, nothing. How can you say he's connected to God? Say because you're looking at him after the whole 9-month process. It's drawing out where waters are down and it splits it up and everything else and creates an independent being. But even after this child's an independent being, you should know where it came from, and because where it came from, it's still connected. Any questions on that? So it says, "Kemoshel haben," just like the manner of the soul's descent is an analogous, just like a child. Hanimshach, that is derived b'moyach ha'av, from the mind of the father. Sha'afilu tzipor nei raglov, even the nails of its foot, nishavu, were created mitipa zumamish, from this drop of semen. I think it says, brought down in Gemara Nida, that it says from the white of the semen, the bones were created from this. The Gemara talks about what's created from what. Yeah. So Al Yidei, now, although you don't see it, and the source, this is why childbirth is such a miracle. And the pregnancy and childbirth is such a miracle. Because you're not taking something and you're picking the glass and I'm changing and I'm using it for something else and I'll make a lamp out of it. You're taking something that when you look at the beginning, the end product doesn't look anything like it. Because the beginning is nothing. It's an egg, a sperm cell, and what's there? Nothing. And you say, watch this. From this, I'm going to make an independent child, independent being. You should know, by the way, on a side note, why is it that one of the greatest desires, there's a whole industry, billion-dollar industry, is based on the sex industry. Why is it? How come you don't go online and there are pictures of chocolate cake? Maybe there is. I should say that. There probably is. Yeah, but it's not the same. And I doubt on magazine stands they have magazines of chocolate cake.
Wait, what's she doing with that chocolate cake?
Shut up.
Hitting on lust.
Move a little further. Why? Where does it come from? Because the Kabbalah explains why is this that we have this uncontrollable desire of control. Why do we have such a strong desire?
Men?
For everybody, by the way. Most women procreate.
For sure. They're not as...
Because the Gemara says that the nature of man is to pursue more than woman. Why is it? Because the Kabbalah explains because human beings are created in God's image, and subconsciously we're always trying to emulate God. Mm-hmm. If I asked you, what is the one thing that you can characterize God's ability more than anything else? It's God's ability to create. When God created the world, His ability to mix in to nature that's not a big deal. It's the creation of order that's a big deal, not the splitting of order. I mean, the splitting of order is a cool trick, but it's the creation of order.
Yeah.
The only time that human beings can partake in something from nothing is the creation of a child. Because what do you have there? There's nothing. Then all of a sudden a child comes.
It's interesting. Because it's very tied in with like creative energy.
That's what it is. That's what it is. We all have. Every human being has creative energy. Yeah. We're always trying. So we're drawn toward it because this is Kabbalah explains what we all have.
It's interesting. Isn't it the man's drive is crazier because of the sin with Chava? I think that's part of the punishment. Do they have like this almost?
You mean that it says that
for the women it's not. So like the men are like chasing after, and like for them they don't have the same.
It's because of I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I haven't seen it connected to that specifically, right? But based on what you're saying, it might be worth it to say what Jackie Mason says. Women need a reason. Men just need a place.
He responded.
Because for women it's about relationship. So it says, so what happens? We have this tipa, the seed, and we have this egg. There's nothing. But al yedei, continuing, where are we? The bottom of
57.
Bottom 57. Al yedei, in the old print 55. Al yedei shahisa Tish Chadashim Babet and Yaim, through being in the mother's womb for 9 months. And what happened there? What happens is, remember, the physical world is a representation of the spiritual world. Just like the soul goes on through, descends from level to level, and takes upon itself all these different looks. So now the seed goes from V'yodem and changes, descended degree by degree. Lishtanois, changing. Lisavois, Tzipernayim. That means I don't know when. I'm not a biologist. I can't answer what's a woman, but I don't know exactly when a child's nails are created. But I'd venture to say it's not early on. I think first is the brain and the heart, and then later on. I think I remember correctly, it's the 8th or 9th month.
Did the nails form?
Yeah, I think so. If I remember.
They are one of the last things.
One of the last things to see. He's also a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Say, I'm not just a president. I'm also a client. Maybe he stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night.
I play one on TV.
Exactly. There you go. So in the beginning, you'll say, what? There's no way nails can come from here, but through a whole process, we get nails. Ve'im kol zeh, and continuing, this is very powerful. Ve'im kol zeh, top of 56 in the old print, 58 in the new print. Ve'im kol zeh, and furthermore, notwithstanding all this, Idena Kashura, so this child and even the nails are bound umiyuchedes and united biyichud nifla with a wondrous and mighty unity with its original essence, because this child comes from the seed of the father. And you might think, okay, only when the child is in the womb of the mother is connected. No, the Alter Rebbe continues. Vegam achshav. And even now, Babed, now he's an independent being. Because you might say, okay, maybe a Jew is a holy Jew before it descends into the world, but once it's born and the guy, so to speak, starts sinning, now he's bad. So Alter Rebbe is going to say no, and I'll say it out loud first, and outside first, and then I will read it inside. When the child is alive, where's the nails, the child's toenails getting nourishment from?
Say it again.
Where do your nails get nourishment from? In the body, from the brain. So that means your toenails are tied to the brain. Yes? So now, obviously, no, it's a lot easier to make the jump that your child's brain is your brain, right? Especially when your kid acts like you.
Yeah.
Right. Don't be an idiot. Why not? I was an idiot. Don't be the same idiot, right? So it says, and even now, Baben, Yinikas Hatzipernayim, the nourishment of these nails, which are dead skin and seemingly not connected, v'chayusam, and their life, Nimsheches, is drawn from the brain that's in the head. This is what I brought up before. This is what it says in the Gemara in Nidon on page 31. Loivein shebimenu gidim, from the white of the semen is from the veins. Batsamis ritzipenayim, in the bones and the nails of the child. So now, Kabbalah talks about, interesting, by the way, this is just on a side note. This is something I'm sure you're familiar with. When Adam was created, his skin wasn't skin.
Mm-hmm.
You've heard of that before?
Yep.
Asaf, you've heard of that?
It was transparent.
It was nails. Transparent?
It was transparent.
That I haven't heard. I've heard nails.
ChatGPT, bro.
What does transparent mean? You can see his internal organs?
So
Like
So
it was
nails-
like,
nails-
You say that it was like see-through, like.
I know. Thank you.
Just-
I'm trying to understand.
Well, they-
Nail,
Thank you.
what you're referring to, the transparency is associated with the same trap tape.
Are nails transparent?
I
Can you
guess
see
so.
pink?
Yeah.
I mean, what?
Can you see pink?
Yeah, I guess. Is that because nails are
That's the skin
transparent?
underneath.
I never thought of it.
Different
I guess.
than
I should ask my daughters. They're always looking at their nails.
When you can see through one is clearly you can see through.
Right. Right. It says there were nails. Obviously, Asaf is not happy with that. Transparent. All right. Oh, we both could be saying the same thing, but I'll say,
They are. That's what I've been saying.
exactly. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
She's just giving you an extra level.
Exactly. Yeah. So in the Kabbalah it says Sharei Chashmal. Now, what does Sharei Chashmal mean? In modern Hebrew, Chashmal means electricity. But in the book of Ezekiel, in the book of Kabbalah, Chashmal doesn't mean electricity. What it means, I don't know. You look inside the book.
Electricity?
Yeah, it doesn't. It's not translated as electricity. You can look in the book of Ezekiel. I think most books don't have it translated. But Ezekiel had this whole vision of he was tripping, and I don't know. He had a vision. It's called the vision of the chariot, and he saw things. One of the things over there is chashmal.
Did you figure it out from the shoresh, or no?
I mean, because modern Hebrew uses electricity, doesn't it?
Isn't it?
Anyway, so beside the levushim shel adam rishon, he says that the esoteric principle of Adam's garment in the Garden of Eden, shall yitzi pernayim, moyach tvuna, were nails from the cognitive faculty of the brain. So basically, so what Kabbalah is saying over there, because the brain, the nails are connected to the brain because they get the nourishment. Now, the reason why we keep using the nails is because nails are dead skin. You can cut them off and there's no pain. Why? Because they're connected, but not really connected. So seemingly, a person we consider a low Jew is someone we're very dismissive of. He's barely connected. Even him, he is getting nourishment from the brain, which is Melech Malchei Amlachim. It's one of the reasons why you can't write anyone off.
So what? It was the light. Like you could see the light through them. That's what I was referring to. The Talmud essentially. The Talmud mentions that he was of great immense stature and might have had a skin that shone with the light covering. Some interpreted as a garment of light.
No, so the great immense stature is something else.
No, but like
Yeah.
like he was transparent that you could see the light coming through.
So the question is, I mean, I'd like to see. I mean, look, Moshe also had a glow of light. Does that mean Moshe's skin was transparent? I wonder what they mean. I mean, to go off the subject because we've been on topic for way too long, and it's about time we go off the subject, right? The Medrash tells us, or Kabbalah tells us, I'm not sure, I don't misquote, that when Adam was created last, it was the last significant creation. Okay, I know he wasn't the last thing created.
Created in the twilight of Shabbos.
So I think it's expired, right? So McDonald's got it right. It's good for a while and get them out, right? Exactly. That's why we only have guys at this class, and probably only have guys watching. Right? What? Oh my God! Did you hear what the rabbi said about women? Only good for a limited time. Anyway, so everything in life has the best by date. Best use. I'm telling you.
A nice suit for taking such a deep hole.
No, listen. My wife doesn't watch the classes. One day if she walks in with her phone in her hand, say,
I got you.
You said what now? Right? I'm sorry, honey. Anyway, so no. Adam was the last significant creature created. Now, the Pirkei Avot does say that certain things were created right before Shabbat. There's a list of 10 things, 11, 12.
Like the Shamir.
The Shamir worm, the ram of Avram, the hole that we're going to read about in next week's parsha with Kairach, the whole ground. But Adam and Chava was created from Adam. So it says, the Medrash says, I think the Gemara brings this up also, that when Adam was created, the animals sensed that he was different, special. And Adam said, no, I'm not the creator. He acknowledged that Hashem is the creator. We all have to acknowledge God as the creator. I think I mentioned this in a different class. That's when Rosh Hashanah began. What's Rosh Hashanah? Where we crown Hashem, we accept God as our king, God as authority. That started with Adam Rishon when the day he was created, and maybe this ties into what Asaf was saying. He had this glow or this.
And what I was referring to, the glow, the transparency, the way that they shone light, the whole base is based on the O, the double meaning of skin and light. Skin and light mean use the same word.
Well, one's ayin and one's aleph, but yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
the play on that is really where in the Talmud they go into the whole thing about how they were radiating light and it was transparent. You could just see it through them.
Right. So, yeah. So that whole time period over there, before Adam and Chava eat from the tree of knowledge, is very trippy. I mean, we know we have it written on paper. I mean, there was no 9 months pregnancy. The Cain and Hevel were born right away. Cain and Hevel were born before the sin of eating from the tree of knowledge, and the tree of knowledge they happened an hour or so after they were created. So
Talk about needing a short time to screw up.
that's a whole different. We'll get to that but yeah. So the question you have to ask yourself: how did they screw up? If God comes to you and says, "Don't eat from the tree,"
But when you do,
but how could you? I mean, obviously, I mean, this ties into what we were saying in the previous class. If God speaks to you, it should have some kind of an impact. I mean, the Jewish people served the golden calf 40 days later. 40 days. This is 40 minutes. I mean, and God spoke.
we improve over time.
Exactly. Yeah. So we improved, right? So the kacha mamish, and the same thing is kaviyachol. I'm on top of page 57 and 59 in the new print. The kacha mamish, and the same thing is this exactly so. Kaviyachol as a word. We have to say kaviyachol. Kaviyachol is a word in Hebrew, meaning because many times we're given examples, but sometimes people get caught up in the details of the example. Oh, it's not true because the example and the analogy don't exactly match. We're talking about spirituality here, and we're human beings, and we're limited, and we can only use examples based on our what we can relate to in our experience. So many times when it gives an example, it's going to say kaviyachol, as it were, or so to speak. It's not exactly, but this is a good example. The root, the case, the source of every ruach neshama shall close Yisrael l'mayla in the community of Israel on high. Now, there's a long note over here, and we're going to spend some time now introducing and explaining the four worlds that you have to become very, very familiar with, because it's going to be mentioned in Tanya throughout. This is not an invention of Tanya, obviously. It is brought up in Kabbalah, but because the Tanya speaks about the godly experience, and the godly experience all depends on how or what level your experience. So the first thing we have to preface and say is that when we use the words higher and lower in spirituality, we're obviously not talking about spatial. When we say, for example, the world of Atzilus is higher than the world of Bria, it's obviously not, one's on the second floor, one's on the third floor. You obviously skip the 13th floor because, right? Good luck, right? You have a 13th floor in your house? Neither do I, right? Yeah.
We're afraid of the Knights Templar.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever it is.
And it's got to be a Friday. Anyway,
Yeah, exactly. So with that preface, let's begin with again. This is just an overall summary. And in Kabbalah and Chassidus deals with a lot of I'm about to say at length, many pages. So this is just very broad. In the beginning, well, starting at one, I don't say it, 0, 1, is God, right? There's the Eibishter. Eibishter is Yiddish for the one above. There's Hashem. He's by himself, okay? Then you have God and godliness. What's godliness? Godliness is expression or means light. Again, it's not light. Light is really an experience. It's a reflection. You see it. You know, in a painting you can't paint light. What's light?
Like,
It's white, right? So there's godliness. So it says in Kabbalah, it says in the beginning it was who? It was Shmoi Levad. It was he and his name. What's a name? You don't need your name. A name is for someone else, unless you're very important and you call yourself in the third person. Maybe I'm wearing a suit now. I should call myself right. You ever saw that Seinfeld episode where George Costanza starts calling himself George? He works for Yankees. He works for the Yankee organization when George Steinbrenner was alive. George is getting upset. So what George is talking about, right? so you know what's on, right?
Yeah,
There you go. So, there you go. At least sometimes you reference something from the 90s, people are looking at you like, what are you talking about? Right? All right. So you have God and godliness. So one of the questions that Kabbalah deals with, which is a very, very difficult question to answer, is how do you get from God to creation? Forget about our world. How do you get from God to anything? God is the epitome of existence. There is nothing but Him. There is nothing that's of any value, zero. So even, let's say the highest angel, archangel, Michael, whatever you pick a something. Everything's absolutely zero. Zero, nothing, garbage. He's the only entity. So how could there be anything else? Forget about our existence. That's already. So this is a question the Kabbalah deals with. So there's something called tzimtzum. Tzimtzum means contraction. Where God, He massively limited His exposure. And only a very a small amount of godliness kind of makes it through that. So there was godliness, and now you only that little tiny ray of light is actually called the kav. I skipped the step, but I don't want to go through it. All this is only that. So at a later stage, I'm not going exactly in order. I'm skipping some stages. At a later stage, that godliness can begin to be experienced in an organized way. The first time that godliness can be experienced in an organized, not a chaotic way. For those of you who have learned a little bit, have read a little bit about in Kabbalistic terms, you might have heard of Olam HaTohu. Asaf, you've heard of Olam HaTohu?
Heard of it all, man. You asked me to be quiet. I'm trying to be quiet back here. Come on.
Olam HaTohu, the word tohu means chaos. The reason why it's called the word chaos is because you have godliness and no way to experience it.
You're not the giving.
Hold on, I don't want to talk about that. It's the first time that godliness can be experienced in an organized way is the world of Atzilus. The world of Atzilus is also called Olam Atikun. Tikun means order, organization. So that's where we're introduced to the 10 Sfirot. Sfirot are the 10 ways that godliness is experienced. Now, our soul also has 10 Sfirot, but we don't call them Sfirot, we call Kochot. Abilities, characters, but we'll get to that more in chapter 3. What does Atzilus mean? Atzilus literally means emanation. So let me give you an example. This is an example I once heard from my teacher, and I'd like the example I'm going to share with you. Let's say you have an idea for a play. You're a content creator, right? So you have an idea for a play. So in your mind, you're thinking to yourself. Now, in your mind, you might thinking it's going to be a play, it's going to be a commercial, whatever it is, a timepiece, 1300s. And I could look at you and you're lost in thought. Now, it's impossible for me to steal that information and to rip it off and say, oh, I came up with this idea. Why? Because it exists inside you. You are thinking to yourself in an organized way, a particular way, but you're expressing yourself to yourself. That's what thinking is. Thinking is you're expressing yourself to yourself. That's what Atzilus is. Atzilus is absolute godliness. But in an organized way. So you have Chachma, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes, Netzach Yisrael Machos, which is conception, contemplation, application, loving kindness, discipline, and compassion. Netzach, a good thing is it's a victory. It's not victory. Endurance, splendor, bonding, and finally, and serenity. Those are the 10 general categories, but you're expressing yourself. So it's impossible for me to steal the idea. So similarly, it's impossible for creation to take place. What does creation mean? The definition of creation is in an entity that identifies itself as separate from God. That's what creation is. So even angels, by the way, are created beings. Angels were created on the second day of creation. Angels are created beings. So even the highest angel, that they have das. Because when you have das, when you have knowledge and intellect, what you're basically saying is, you understand. The me, the I, the yesh, the I understand. So the highest angels, they have understanding. So in the world of Atzilus, the world of emanation, it's absolute godliness, impossible for creation, any kind of separation of creation to take place, because it's godliness, but in an organized way. That is the initial step, because in order for creation to take place later, godliness has to be broken down. So now that organized way is not only organization, it's also a filtration system. Godliness is slowly being watered down. The first 3 svirot are intellectual. Chachma bina das, conception, contemplation, application. The 6 later ones are more emotional. In Kabbalistic terms, it's called Zah, Zeir Anpin, the small face. Finally, the lowest one is called Malchus, because it receives everything. If you remember, I'm sure, Eric, you remember from the Yom Kippur book, and you stay all the way to the end of the service, right, Eric? Right. Yeah.
Not in agreement.
Of course, yes, yeah, right. Just smile away, boys, right? So there's a story there with the 10 martyrs. The Romans killed the 10 rabbis, right? And in the liturgy, it says the soul of Rabbi Shmuel the Kohen Gadol ascended to the highest of highest, and they asked, should we accept upon ourselves this decree? He wanted to kill them because Joseph was sold by the 10 brothers, so he wanted to kill these 10 rabbis. So the angel, or wherever it is, I can't remember exactly who responds, says, I heard me'achoyrea pargud, from the other side of the pargud. Pargud, you can translate as a curtain, separation. So, I'm sure you're familiar with something from nothing, right? God created the world something from nothing.
That was the guy.
When does,
That was the rabbi. I forgot his name, but he was like trying to plead for them to, and then I think it's like he said he heard from the other side.
Well, in that story?
I think so.
That story, they asked Rabbi Shmuel to go up, say that, and ask if they should.
So that's what I'm saying. I think he's the one who know, so that he heard from the other side that it wasn't like the angel.
The angel told him he heard from the other side.
Uh-huh.
Remember correctly. It's been a while since Yom Kippur. By the way, 3 months left to Yom Kippur. I'm letting you know. 3 months left.
Yeah.
So Rosh Hashanah is September 16th. I'm letting you, putting it on.
No, at least not very chill. You're not getting ready in like 2 months.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So we have plenty more time to sin. Yeah. Okay. So Yom Kippur is going to be September 26th. I mean, yeah. So the idea of something from nothing happens in between the world of Atzilus and Bria. So, but why my phone started talking to me?
What?
I don't know. My phone started talking to me.
It doesn't look like it's recording.
No, it is. Because you have the square to stop it.
All right. No, because it said my earphone. Anyway, so going back to the idea. Okay, going back to you have this idea for a play.
Your phone doesn't look like it's in the best shape. So.
Yeah, well, that's what happens. I took a slip and fall, right? I'm waiting for an attorney. So you have this idea in your head, right? And you have it all thought out in your head. When does the possibility present itself for someone else to rip off your idea? When you go and you say, what I'm going to do? I'm just going to jot down just basic points. Timepiece, 1300s,
right.
Love story, whatever it is. So if I take those those bullet points, I'll probably won't be able to recreate what you have in your head, but I can have an idea, and I can come and say I had the idea.
Right.
This happened, you should know, in the 1990s. 1990s, Disney and DreamWorks both came out with very similar movies. One was called Ants, and one was called A Bug's Life.
Right, true.
So I read once, the guy in DreamWorks, I think A Bug's Life, I think did a lot better than Ants.
Yeah.
The guy who used to work in Disney, Bug's Life is Disney, right?
Yeah.
And he was working there at the initial stages when A Bug's Life was being worked on,
Yeah, developed, yeah.
was being developed. Thank you. And
It's
hit,
like Pixar, right?
okay, maybe it's Pixar. Maybe it's Pixar, not Disney. Now Disney and
but
Pixar are together.
They already partnered at that time.
All right. Anyway, so what happened was there was some kind of disagreement, and he left Disney, he left Pixar, whichever one it was, and he went to DreamWorks and he said, "I have this idea, and it's a great idea," and they developed it. But you look at the final product. They look very, very different because. So, but in the analogy, the ability to rip off your idea, to come and say, "Oh, it's my idea. I'm the one that invented it." You know, the whole Facebook, right? Isn't that an argument with Facebook? Who invented Facebook, right?
Yeah.
Didn't they sue the guy?
Right.
So happened, in that world is called Bria. Bria means creation, not because creation actually takes place. It doesn't take place. The reason why the world is Bria is called Bria, creation, is because the possibility for independent or perceived independent, we perceive ourselves as independent, that process begins then. So going back to the example. So in your mind, you have Bria. You write down your bullet points. You might go to your creator, you might go to your publisher or whatever it is, whatever producer. I have this idea. I'll tell you, okay, it's very nice, but yeah, there's nothing here. So you go back, and now the idea begins to take form. 1376, and there's whatever, and there's two families, the Montagues and the
Modelos.
Modelos? No, who's the Romeo and Juliet? Montague and something else.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I'm in high school.
yeah.
Exactly.
Well, there you go. Thank you.
Nice.
See, Chat GPT. The guy looks up everything on his phone. Unbelievable. Do you know anything on your own? Anyway, so you say you have these two, and you go and you form the entire idea, and you might even you put it on paper. The more you express what's going on inside of you and you put it down on paper, the greater the possibility for someone to rip off that idea. So in the analogy, this is the watering down, the descent of the godly presence, meaning God's presence is becoming more minimalized, less expressive, and the ability for people, or the ability for even angels, to see itself as something of self-importance. But you still don't have a play. All you have is an idea, and you have a script, right? And you have an idea. Even who your actors can be, and then comes action. Action. You hire your actors and your directors and your props and everything else. That's this world. That's the creation of the play. So I can create the movie, buy you out, and say, all right, I didn't. I heard on the radio this morning. It's 40 years or 42 years since the Raiders of the Lost Ark. So I heard it. Talking about it on BBC. Something like
They
that.
just came out with another movie.
Yeah, they did.
So there you go. I think it was 40 years, 40-something years.
Even he can't retire.
Right? He's Jewish. He's Jewish, and the Torah doesn't believe in retirement. So there you go. So let's say, for example, I meet some guy from the Amazon jungle, right? And I instead of taking off the word, Steven Spielberg, I have a Mordechai and Druzier, right? I said, look at this movie I made. I go, wow, this guy's a genius, right? The other guy did all the work, and someone else is taking all the credit. That's the world of action. That's the world that we live in. We live in this world, and let's say something good happens to us, and Moshe warns the Jewish people, don't think it's because of you. The wisdom and the power of my hands has made from you all this greatness and valor. We forget. God does everything, but we rip off his idea, so to speak. That whole example I just gave, Atzilus, Bria, Yitzira, Asiya, emanation, creation, formation, and action, is the watering down process. Why? In order for us to have free choice. The angels exist on a higher plane, where there's more expression, revelation of godliness, and that's why they don't have free will. Because when there's an expression of godliness, right? A lot of people go to Israel, they go to the wall, and they have this, fuzzy feeling inside, and they can't explain it. Or they go to Tzvat, and no, I'm not mocking it. It's true. Israel is a very holy place. And again, can you imagine if we were able to go on the other side of the wall? Look what happened. We spoke about this in the previous class with Nadav and Avihu, Aaron's two sons. They walked into the Holy of Holies. Why? Because there were miracles happening. There was a tremendous revelation of godliness. They couldn't take it anymore. So the angels don't have free choice because they're in a constant state of godliness. Then now let us sit down. See, by the way, you want to see self-restraint? Look at it. This is such a good boy. Yeah. I think the lights are turning off in 30 seconds. And we're going to have to do...
You don't know what's going to happen in 31 seconds.
Who said that? Who said that?
28 seconds.
Right? And this is... Exactly. And this is the watering down process. So why does a person... Going back to the beginning, we're going to end up from this point. Why does a person's soul experience nefesh, or experience ruach, or experience neshama? It's because his soul, starts up all the way up there. But, I mean, you ever been in New York? Right? You ever take the train in New York? So you have the local and the express. So if you ever take the express train in New York, by the time you get to your stop, you're exhausted. You just go, as it is, everyone falls asleep on the train. But if you're on the express train, you feel more refreshed. Or if you ever have the good experience to fly business or first class. I remember one time I flew. My sister-in-law used to be a travel agent. She got me an upgrade when I came back from yeshiva in Israel, a business class. I remember, I'm coming off the plane this way, and everyone else is coming off the plane that way. I'm looking at them. I was like, did we fly in the same plane? Because these people look terrible. It's like I slept. I felt great. I'm looking at these people like, damn. I'm like, is that the way I look when I fly? Yeah. If you work harder in life, right? So we're making fun of those people. So the point is sometimes some souls they fly. Some souls they fly first class. They feel great. They feel energized. Some souls fly business. Some souls they're going the same direction. They're coming the same. Everything's the same. They're coming from the same departure, the same arrival. But even though they're on the same plane, it's not the same trip. So a person whose soul goes through the whole local stop, all the stops in Atzilus, and all the stops of Bria, all the stops of Yitzira and Asiya, comes down here. By the time he comes here, his soul's so worn out and tired. Mitzvah. What is a mitzvah? Moshe Rabbeinu's, for example, Moshe Rabbeinu's neshama didn't go through any stops. Moshe Rabbeinu's neshama, it says in Kabbalah, went straight from the world of Bria, straight down to Asiya. No stops. So when he came down, he was like, private jet. What are you talking about?
From Bria or from Atzilus?
Bria. No neshamas come from Bria. Atzilus.
So all neshamot come from Bria? From Bria?
Yeah. I got you to say it like an Ashkenazi.
I know, right?
I'm wearing you down, baby. I'm wearing you down.
From America.
Exactly. By the time I'm done with you, you're gonna go back to your family. Like, what do they do to you at Chabad?
Wait, hold on. Though.
Yeah.
This might be the thing I'll take away from tonight.
Yeah.
All souls come from Bria.
All souls emanate.
From Bria.
Start the descent. Start their journey from Bria.
So what's our connection with Bria?
Bria is the world of a world of creation. That's the world where independence, the idea of independence begins. Because before it's only godliness, and the idea of independence you can't fathom, right? Remember when I was a kid? There was a kid once who ran away from home, but he only made it to the corner. Why? Because he wasn't allowed to cross the street without permission. Hilarious. Right? So the idea is he thinks he's independent. But exactly the idea of independence.
So what do we
yeah.
tap into in Atzilut?
You can only tap into Atzilus through Torah and mitzvahs.
And our soul is not there. We are tapping into Hashem.
We're tapping into godliness at a supernal level. Well,
And
mitzvahs is even.
so our souls are all connected in Atzilut. Atzilut is not our soul.
Our neshamas are connected higher than Atzilus. Our neshamas
Higher
come.
than Atzilut.
Our
What's higher
neshamas.
than Atzilut?
What's higher than Atzilus? You have Keser, you have Atik, Arich, Adam Kadman.
Oh no, okay, no, I'm talking about But no
You have
souls-
Atzmos.
no souls come from Atzilut. They don't emanate from Atzilut.
They don't start. They don't become
I'm not
expressed.
talking about it all the way to Adam Kadmon. I'm not
Right,
referring
right,
to those.
right.
I'm referring to
No.
their like
No.
when we tap into Atzilut, it's not our soul that we're tapping into.
So the soul's coming Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya. That is the experience the soul is going to have in relation to God.
Okay.
So if your soul emanates from Bria, the connection to God or godliness is going to be very strong, because in that realm there's very little friction
How do
between.
you identify that? Where your soul emanates from? How do you come to discover that?
You got to be someone who has that vision. I mean, the tzaddikim, and this all end up for the story, just to Asaf's point. So the Arizal had a student. His name was the Alshach. He's buried in Tveria.
Oh, Sheikh, yeah.
The Alshach.
Yeah.
He was Ashkenaz. Okay, he's one of my guys. Okay, and so he's famous for writing a book on halacha medrash, and he was a student at Arizal. Arizal was a Kabbalist, and in every single class he would fall asleep. And one time he came to the Arizal and he was bothered. I come to your class. This is me, by the way. Every class, you know. So, and he said to the Arizal, "How come I keep falling asleep? If it bothers me, I want to learn." So the Arizal said, "Is because your soul stems from the realm of this part. We didn't get into it, and it's late now. There's also something called the Pardes. Pardes, the orchard, the way the Torah is experienced. The Torah comes from God's intellect. So you have Pshat is simple. Remez, what the Torah says and doesn't say, hinted. The Drash, where it's learned out, and you have Sod, the Kabbalistic, the mystical. You want to use that word. Hidden, yeah. So he says, your neshama. So I'm teaching Sod, the hidden stuff. Your neshama comes from Remez. You can't drash. You can't relate. That's why you fall asleep. That's why he directed him. You should write a book on halacha and midrash. He didn't write a book about Kabbalah because he wasn't drawn to it. So the idea is that Lexus creates a bunch of cars, but not every car comes back looking the same, because it's all about how this journey comes. So that's why we can't, unless you're an expert in Jews, we can't judge another Jew. You don't know. Maybe this guy has an unbelievable neshama, very powerful neshama, and you don't know. But because of the whole journey that neshama came down, he's not fully aware of his own potential. That's what a tzaddik is for. When you go to a rebbe, a tzaddik, what you're going to is he's going to help you realize your own potential. But maybe you don't even know it was there.
Is there a way of identifying where you're from? Because it's like you could tell your natural inclinations and what you're drawn to. So
I think you're referring to a certain mitzvah though.
I mean, that's on the surface
No.
level,
But when it's discussed in Tanya, there's every soul is drawn towards a mitzvah.
But that's that's touching more of what your purpose is in this world, though.
Right.
Because if you're connected to these things, that's where you should be. Your
Right.
focus is. It's more that it's if you're drawn to certain things.
Like what?
These things.
You saying, but you mean which level of the Pardes
Personality
of the
also,
Pardes?
you're very connected to specific things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
it's
so
and
maybe
these things are drawn from certain worlds.
Right.
So you could tell that if you're very connected to specific things, it's you're most probably more connected to.
But
that.
I think that's more relation to Pardes,
Maybe.
the area of Torah,
Yeah.
than as much as understanding.
Maybe.
The-
But
the-
that's
the-
like surface also. That's just like
It's not.
because it's like
It's not, because Paradise is the avenue, so to speak, of the easiest connection to Torah.
Like, not to say that that's not right.
No, no, no,
but
no,
I'm just
no.
saying
It's two different
like,
things.
Yeah.
So what we spoke about today, Atzilas, Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya, have more to do with how much overlay,
Yeah.
how deep, like oil or water, how deep in the ground is it? Bria, it's very close to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
That has to do with the level of neshama. Yitzira is further down. That has to do with ruach. Nefesh, deep. So you want a guy to be all excited about Judaism, you got to dig deep to get that spark. Not because it's holy. It's holy. The water is pure.
The other way around,
Huh?
wouldn't Bria be all the way down?
Why?
If you're talking about oil, like the deeper wells are the ones that have better oil.
No, I was giving an example of what I meant by the example is the obstruction.
Mm-hmm.
In order to get to what's there, how much dirt,
Hold on, so
schmutz you have to
said
go
that
through.
Moses came straight from Bria.
His neshama. So his neshama was at the surface. There was no obstruction between
Oh,
him
I
and.
misunderstood you. I thought that it was like a deeper soul.
No.
Comes
No, so what we're trying to say
more
is,
clarity.
what we're trying to say is there is no such thing as a deeper soul. All souls come from the same place. The question is, how much obstruction is there between, how much obstruction is the world present from the soul to experience godliness? If your neshama is coming from Bria, pretty much no obstruction. But that's Moshe Rabbeinu. Everyone else, there's a whole buildings, there's a whole forest. Can't, it's much harder. That's so every Jew is holy. It could be they don't appreciate it, and that's why some people will be easier. All right, questions, comments? Keep it to yourself.
Just
Okay.
one.
Yeah.
You named between Atzilot and Adam Kadmon.
No, Adam Kadmon was way higher.
I know, but you named two other ones.
Atik.
And
Atik came in and there's Atik and Arich.
is
Yeah.
that Vital? Is that Ashlag? Where did you
Whoa,
get
what
that?
did we say?
Where did
No, what do you
come from?
say?
Is that Vitalian Kabbalah? Is that Ashlagian Kabbalah? Where did you get those two other ones?
I don't know. It's important Kabbalah. Where exactly? I don't know. It's important. We're not going to mention it here. No. The Arizal speaks about it in the Zemirot of Shabbos. He says Atik Yemen, and it's actually referenced, by the way, if you want, open up the Kabbalah on Parshas Vayetze, in the book of where Yaakov is dealing with the sheep over there. It mentions there
What are they called?
Atik.
Yeah.
Arachan Pen is something else. Yeah.
It's not.
It's Atik, and the other one is Kadmon, Atik. The other names I'm forgetting. I'll get back to you. All right, guys. Oh, thank you.